Hi guys, welcome back. So we've got another interview today with the lovely Aunt Carla, who's here today to talk to me all about hoodoo, and it's going to be super interesting. So hi, welcome to the channel.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So if you just like to introduce yourself to anybody who doesn't know who you are, I know that's always fun when someone's like, would you like to introduce yourself?
No, sure. So I'm Aunt Carla, and I have, I guess a lot of people know me through my Instagram channel at Marie Lizzeu, Marie, that's Lizzeau. And I do a lot of teaching, and well, I'm originally a hoodoo practitioner. That was my magical foundation. But at Marie Lizzeu, like I have t-shirts, but I also do a lot of teaching. But my style of teaching isn't just hoodoo. I teach a lot of magic that deals with how to create your best life, basically. So it's not just hoodoo, and there's like psychology, there's law of attraction, and there's definitely different forms of magic that I'm also incorporating in my style of magic.
Awesome. And for everybody who wants to check that out, all the links will be down below. Fingers crossed, all being well.
Yes.
Technology working, and you can go down below after the video and check it all out. So we're talking today, and it's your subject, because I like to ask people what they'd like to talk about. I think that's far more interesting. About the roots of hoodoo and folk magic, and kind of how that can help people along their path, because a lot of these interviews have been around the idea of helping people in these difficult times. So could you just give us a little bit of a background about how you feel about that and some of the ways in which it's influenced your path, maybe?
Sure. So I started, as hoodoo came into my life, or I guess it was already in my life when I was a little kid. I had an aunt who was doing like different kinds of candle magic, and I didn't really know what it was. And she wasn't the type of person who would tell me what she was doing, but I saw everything. And as I became older and I moved away, I'm originally from Miami, Florida, and when I moved to New York City, I started to see other things, like like for example, when I was in Miami, my aunt used to take me to a botanica, which is like a spiritual store, and they would have candles and like Catholic statues of Catholic saints, and it was kind of spooky and cool and mysterious. And when I was older and I moved away, I found different stores, on my own, and I was immediately attracted to them. And although I knew that my aunt she had magical practices, I really didn't know what they were. But when I got older, I was able to study and research and find out, oh, okay, this is really cool. And I found out that what she was doing was practicing hoodoo. So hoodoo is a form of folk magic. And the thing is, what I've been learning the more I study, is that every culture has some form of folk magic. And folk magic is folk magic it's magic that is taught, that's handed down, like your mother, your grandmother, your auntie would do. And it's not like a high ceremonial type of magic, and every culture has some kind of folk magic, and it is going to be a reflection of that particular culture. So hoodoo was created by enslaved Africans, because when Africans were still in Africa before they became enslaved, they already had their spirituality. They already had their own way of doing things. But when they were enslaved and brought to the New World, the United States and the Americas, they were not allowed to practice their magic. So what they ended up doing was creating a new system of magic based on what they were allowed to do, which looks like Christianity. So there's a lot of Christian elements within hoodoo, but there's also stuff that is a little different. So there are a lot of different spells within hoodoo that are definitely a reflection of the African American experience. So things like domination. So sometimes someone will look at someone, right now, they'll say, wow, look at that spell, is called do as I say, or domination. Oh, that looks really interesting. But if you think of it in the context of enslaved Africans who had no chance of escape, no chance of a good life, they were using magic to find relief in an oppressive time. So things like, you know, so you might want to try to control, you know, your master if you're trying to keep from getting sold away, or try to keep your child from getting sold away. And, you know, so there's different, or there's things like law keep away, things like that. So there are all of these different spells, these different kinds of spells that you see in hoodoo that are very much a reflection of the African American experience and the oppression that they suffered. And you see now, even to this day, there's a lot of different things like, you know, law keep away. Well, here it is, over 400 years later, and, you know, Black people are still being, you know, brutalized and killed at the hands of police. So, I mean, that's not all that hoodoo is, but it's mostly about that. It's basically how to survive in a difficult world. So, but, you know, if you go to, say, Appalachian, like in different parts of the country in the United States, you're going to see folk magic spells that are going to deal more with like healing or what to do about your crops. So I'm fascinated with folk magic in general because every single culture has just created a way to find power in a powerless world. You know, these are people who lived off the land, people who, this is before modern medicine. And just over time, generations would pass these, you know, these practices down. And some of the things that we think of as superstition or old wives' tales were just basically folk magic. So I just happen to know of hoodoo because of, you know, my particular you know, culture, but there's so many different kinds of folk magic out there that many people are still practicing. And it's really cool and it fascinates me. I'm always, you know, just like, oh, really? I would love to learn about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who was looking into folk magic, but maybe they felt disconnected from it? Maybe they didn't have the handed down experience.
Sure.
They didn't have like relatives who were interested. Maybe they were the first in their family to have stepped away from, say, Christianity or a similar religion. What would you advise for them?
You know, it's so true because there's so many people actually who have stepped away, or they don't know about it, or they don't know that their great grandmother practiced these kind of things. So I would say just do some research. It's not really difficult to find. You know, there's, you know, if you think about like Celtic magic, things that happened, anything that happened before Christianity. Like Christianity is one place that it's like once people became Christian, a lot of that magic that came before had been demonized. So people are like, oh, you're doing this or you're worshiping the devil. And no, this is just what, you know, people were doing to survive. But then what Christianity did was it saw all of these different stories and mythologies that people were using, and then they just kind of rebranded it for Christianity. So if someone was interested in finding out like what their culture would have been doing, I'd say do some research in like who are your people, where are you from? So from what I understand, like the Appalachian, like in the Appalachian Mountains, a lot of people who live there, for example, might have been Scotch Irish. So then, okay, what are the different practices? You could research that, like the internet, you know, you could start, but I'm sure there's books as well. But like a good internet search is like, okay, what are the roots of Irish folk magic, you know, Scottish folk magic? What were people doing then? And there will be all of this information that you can find and you can practice. And something that's kind of, I never thought I was going to do this, but I'm kind of curious now. Because I often get the question from people like, well, I was adopted, I don't know. There's, you know, if you have any kind of idea, like if you came from a different country, for example, you might have at least some kind of idea of, okay, my family might have been doing this. But, you know, if you believe in DNA testing, some people are doing that and they're able to look at, okay, you know, to get the pie chart of what are the European, what's the background of my family. And then you can look at, okay, well, what are the magical practices from those countries? And that will give you at least some idea. And then also, I guess, when you start to do that research and you're saying, okay, so I have X amount of, you know, I'm European, I might have some Norse, you know, you know, there's all these different kinds of folk magic, folklore that is available. So I would say start looking through those things and seeing if it resonates with you. I would recommend also having like starting an ancestor altar. An ancestor altar, and some people are like, well, I don't know my ancestors. That's okay. Your ancestors know who you are. So what some people will do, they will set up an altar, and that will be sort of to open up communication, open up the lines of spiritual communication with their ancestors. And when they do that, it's advised that, you know, listen to your dreams, listen to the intuitive messages that you get, because it is very possible that when you make that attempt to reach out to your ancestors, they will come back to you, and you will get some kind of feeling of, oh, okay, I had a dream about a certain kind of people, you know, and I saw them doing this, or someone told me, I think that was my great 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 grandmother. Or, you know, by opening the lines of communication, you will start to also get just intuitive information on who your ancestors were and the kind of work that they did. So that could be very helpful as well.
Mm. How important would you say working with your ancestors is within your personal practice, and within what you're happy to talk about? Obviously, what does that look
Sure.
like for you?
Sure. Well, and it's so funny because now when I originally learned, when I first started studying hoodoo, I learned from a woman who wasn't Black. And although I learned a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm very, very grateful for her, I later learned that the ancestral part, the ancestral veneration part, is so very important in hoodoo, because you are getting some of your power, or I guess a lot of your power and protection, from those who went before, from those who had struggled, from those who had gone through that, and they want to protect you. So when I studied with other teachers and learned that the ancestral piece is the foundation, I was like, okay, now how do I add this in? How do I make this work? So recently actually, I have like a simple ancestor altar. So you have like a picture of your ancestors. You could start with one. It doesn't have to be a whole bunch. A candle, like a white candle, and a glass of water. Water represents spirit. And, you know, you make that communication with them. You can like look at them every day, or sit with them every day, perhaps have a conversation. Some people like to give offerings of food and different things that their family member liked. So say, for example, if your mother, for example, she liked to smoke cigarettes, some people will put like cigarettes, you know, on their altar, or some people will put like whiskey, or, you know, whatever their ancestor liked to drink. And it's sort of like it's like your ancestor altar is a place that, like, if your grandmother was coming to visit your home, you would give her favorite foods. You would give her, you would make sure she has a place to sit down, that she's comfortable. So an ancestor altar is a place where you are communicating with your ancestors, and by opening that line of communication, you are also not necessarily asking for their help, because some people do that as well. Some people use their ancestor altar to ask for help in their spells, but you can also just have that strength that comes from having that spiritual relationship with your ancestors. So for me, I've been keeping it very simple, but I actually had a dream the other night, because it's been on my mind. I had this dream that I was like, my mother, my father, and my grandmother, they told me that they were going to move in with me. And at the time, I didn't understand what was going on. So I was arguing with them, like, no, you're not coming to my house. Because I'm thinking, you're not going to come and live with me. No, you're not going to do that. I'm going to move out. Then you can come and live in my house, but I'm going to move out. You can have my house. And then the next morning when I woke up, I was like, oh, they're telling me that they're going to be in my house. Oh. But I will say, though, I did work it out, though, before I woke up, because someone had come up to us during this dream, and they're like, shh. And then I realized, you know what, I'm being really hard on my family here. And I was like, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. If you want to come and stay with me, it's okay. It's okay. You can. But when I woke up in the morning, I'm like, oh, this was my ancestors telling me that they are, you know, that they are responding to the work that I was doing. But I hadn't even, it was funny because it hadn't occurred to me. In this dream, I was sort of like a teenager, you know, saying no one wants their mother and father and grandmother to move in their house, but I didn't realize that it wasn't like moving in physically. They were meaning, yes, your altar, we have accepted the altar that you are setting up, and we want to be on your altar, and we want to, you know, we want to remain in contact with you. So there's like a whole process. And you know, so that was like my experience. So so now I'm just I'm organizing a new altar now, a new ancestor altar, you know, for my mother, father, grandmother, to, you know, a place to honor them, and you know, and just make it really nice. Like previously I just had, you know, I would move it around because I didn't really know what to do, or I was like, oh, I don't want to have this where people are going to walk in, but then, you know, we have a lockdown, so no one's coming in my house anyway, so it's fine. So so the long story short, I am growing into the ancestral veneration part. So better late than never.
Yeah. I wonder if it's particularly poignant for a lot of people right now with their ancestors, because I had an ancestor dream 2 or 3 nights ago, and it was my grandmother, and my grandmother was basically telling me that she'd gotten in the way of a particular situation in my life that was bad for me, and she wasn't having it. And so she was letting me know that she had played a part in stopping that situation, and these were her reasons why. And I was like, okay.
that is like so cool. Now at the moment, now I'm curious, I want to ask you, so at the time, were you weren't happy about that? You probably wanted whatever that was, right? You know, and then you're probably really mad about it, and then like your grandmother's like, this is why this didn't happen. Like I saved you, but you didn't know, and I understand you were mad, but this is why. And but that probably feels good to at least like, oh, okay, now you feel better about it, because sometimes things happen.
I think it's always nice to know that someone's keeping an eye on you.
From
the other side. They get a better picture of what's going on, really, don't they, than we do, especially when we're like tunnel vision.
Right. They know a lot more. So now I'm also curious, like, do you have any kind of like ancestors, like pictures of your grandmother, or because like you don't have to get this kind of protection, but I'm just curious, do you do anything
I don't actually have any pictures. Like, I'm estranged from most of my family, not all of them, but most of them. And I do have like digital pictures of my grandmother, so I sort of have a digital space, but as yet I haven't got any physical ones. We're trying to see if we can get hold of some. Me and my sister are both trying to get hold of some, and seeing what we can do. But my ancestral space is a little bit more abstract, so I'll have like symbols that mean something to me that are like touchstones between her and I, and so at the minute it's not pictures so much, it's more, it's very difficult to describe it, really, isn't it, where it's like a space that they're welcome, and it's more symbolic than it is photographs, which is a different way of doing it.
Well, but it's clearly working. It's, you know, you're clearly making that connection, and that's another thing. Other people put if they have any items of their ancestors, they'll put that on there. Some people might have graveyard dirt, you know, something to connect them. But if you have nothing, you know, if someone's like watching this and they're like, well, I don't have any of those things, that's okay. You know, some people might just have like a piece of paper, and they'll mention the ancestors that they know. And then they might also write to all the ancestors who mean well for me, like, you know, all the ancestors who are looking out for me and want me to do well, you know, something to that effect, because you can also have ancestors who aren't necessarily looking out for you. So just even having that that notepad or that piece of paper gives you that it's still that communication, you know, those lines are open.
A couple of months ago I did a little ritual that was similar to that idea, and it was singing to the mothers of my mothers, whose name I do not know but want the best for me, and bringing that energy in, and I was creating the I don't know if you've seen them. They're like the little red dolly ancestral dolls that people create and hang in trees. It is a folklore thing.
I'm gonna have to look that up. And is that in the UK, or was it Redfolk dolls? What?
It was red tent ancestral folk dolls, and I think it is a UK based practice that I found out about a few months ago. So I brought it into my ancestral practice, and it is something it's quite practiced in the red tent ceremonies, the female gatherings ceremonies.
Yes.
And where you have red cloth to represent the women in your line that you don't necessarily know, and then you can hang them in trees. I've got one on my altar up behind me, which no one can see because I've got my fake background on.
Right.
But it was such a lovely way of connecting with the ancestral mothers, whom we don't necessarily know their names, but they're connected to us through the red thread, like in the red tent, so through the red thread of bloodline, and who, only inviting in the energies that want to protect us, obviously.
So those red dolls are representatives of your ancestors? Oh, that is beautiful. I have to say, like, when you were saying that, like, I was getting tingles all over. Like, that is so cool.
Yeah, I really loved it. When I found out about it a couple of months ago, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to do this.
Yeah.
And it works really, really well. And we took it to our red tent then as well, that we were going into ritual. And we were like, do you guys want to do this? Because I brought red cloth with me, and we all did it, and it was lovely. And we hung them on the lady's tree there. So that was such a lovely experience of ancestral work, which is something that you guys can do.
Yeah.
So let's get back to hoodoo before.
Right, okay.
Otherwise, I'll like veer right off.
No, but this is still so cool.
So, in current times, we've obviously got a lot of turbulence, and some of the things that you've already talked about. There is shocking police brutality against Black Lives Matter protesters and against people in general. I keep mentioning Breonna Taylor, and I will keep mentioning her.
Yes.
And she's obviously not the only one, but she has not had justice to date, as of when we are recording this video.
Yes.
And how do you feel that elements of hoodoo in particular can help people who are struggling? Either they're in a situation where they're afraid of the police, they're afraid of what's happening going on around them, or they're protesting because this is something that matters to them, and that they have the ancestral connection and they want to bring hoodoo into that practice to help social change and keep themselves and others protected at the same time.
Sure. Well, there's all kinds. Hoodoo has several spells for protection. They have some that are very specific to the law, for example, like law keep away. And, you could look that up, but, that they could be a candle, they could be, there's different ways to perform the ritual, but they will involve, I imagine, a particular kind of herb. And so you could do a spell for to keep the law away. You can do a spell for protection. Like there's all kind of different protection spells within hoodoo, but there's also like protection from the police. And I know that also there's people who use that spell because they're doing things that are illegal. So like someone is selling drugs, and for whatever reason they're selling drugs, so they may be doing a law keep us away spell in order to keep their work, because they might, maybe they might not be able to get a regular job. So that's how they are making their money. I'm not going to judge, but I'm saying I understand that is one thing that people do. But like a protester might want to have some other kind of protection, like some kind of general protection. In one of my old books, I found there was, I did find spells for protect you from discrimination. So there's like tons and tons of hoodoo spells that are for these kind of situations. And for our Black men especially, it's definitely a good idea for them to have some kind of protection on them before they go out, because many many Black men leave their house and they don't come home that same day, you know, because something happened to them. They walked into the wrong place, or they were misidentified. Is that the right word? You know, like, or they were accused of something that they didn't do. And, you know, it's very difficult to be a Black man in the United States. And there's so many things working against them. So I highly recommend, you know, having those kind of magical protections. And, you know, and back to the whole Christianity thing, there are also so many African Americans, or, you know, who started as enslaved Africans and who did not take on hoodoo. They decided to reject hoodoo. They were whitewashed by, you know, or brainwashed by their masters into thinking that Christianity is the way to go and hoodoo is not the way to go. So you have a lot of Christians, and it's not just Black people, but I mean, you have a lot of people who are Christian who are saying, oh, that's the devil, whereas this magic was here way before Christianity. This was way before the Bible. So they don't understand that. So these are people who are, you know, like religious and judgmental, and they don't understand and don't want to understand that this might actually be more protective. This might offer more help than just going to a church and praying to, you know, a God in the sky. There are so many,
I do wonder, because of the nature of the oppressor in that situation, the people who are in charge, particularly in America, but it's a worldwide issue, who are in command of these people in the police and things. There is a through line of Christianity that supports that. And it's obviously not, I don't know that I would call it, I'm not a fan of Christianity, but it's not what Christianity at core is supposed to be. It's kind of like that weird perverted form of Christianity, which is all about hatred. And so I do wonder if for a lot of people in the situation in America, that going back to the roots, going back to things like hoodoo might actually help them on that level too, because it provides a protection of ancestors who have seen the evils of Christianity many times over, and can help bring their protection and that kind of indignation of not again, not my children's children, they've just done to us, and it help from that angle. Is that something that you think would feature into it?
Absolutely. I mean, you just said a mouthful right there. And I feel that, like, I mean, you're right. Christianity at its core, it's about love. It's about forgiveness. But now Christianity became a corporation, you know, and it's used now to control people. It's used to control brown people. You know, think about missionaries who are going into like a third world country. The third world country, they didn't need Christianity. They didn't need this, you know, they didn't need the white man's God, but the white man would go into their, like, or even when Europeans when they first went to the New World, they were also trying to convert the Native Americans. And they were calling them savages because they didn't believe in their God. So I feel that Christianity is used a lot to control people. And it's like, by getting everyone under this theory of this one God, then therefore we can control you. We can give you something to fear. We can give you something to hope for. But I feel that, no, I believe that all this power that we're talking about, it comes from within us. And even Jesus is, you know, is quoted in the Bible as saying that the kingdom of heaven is within you. And for those of us who are in more like a metaphysical studies, which I am also, we believe that this means that Jesus was saying, I have power within me. You have power within you. And that to me is what magic is all about, or witchcraft is all about. I am using this power that is within me. I'm going to have a candle ritual. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to harness the power of nature, and I'm going to create transformation. I do not need to go into some house of worship. I do not need to go into some house or some place and worship some person in order to create healing, to create love, to create prosperity. I reject that all. I totally reject that. But people have been brainwashed to believe that Christianity is the only way to go. But, you know, you and I, we know better.
What would you say to somebody who wanted to reject Christianity and was was either practicing hoodoo or very interested in it, and then struggled because, as you already said, there are Christo elements within hoodoo that have been incorporated because of when, you know, that it got meshed into something that was seen as more acceptable. So I know that for in a lot of hoodoo there are things like you read Bible psalms and passages and things like that, and if someone was really struggling with that element, is there a way around that? Is there different ways to practice without it?
Well, when it comes to something like the Psalms, one of the things I like to tell people or remind people is that the Psalms were around before the Bible. They were there before Christianity. The Psalms were there. There were scriptures that were there before Jesus. Jesus wasn't even a thing. And some people believe that the Psalms, the book of Psalms, is actually a book of spells. So I like to tell people that, you know, if you can somehow try to make peace with it. You don't have to do that. I'll give you two different ways. So you can just say, okay, you can come from the place of a book of Psalms is really a powerful document. It's a powerful scripture. And because of the tradition and how long it's been in use, there's power in the fact that it's been around so long. And if you decide to read those words, you are tapping into the magic that was there before Christ even walked this earth. So for some people that's good enough. For other people, then I say, if you really can't get down with this, you're just like, no, I'm not down with the Bible stuff, then I recommend for those people, read intentions, speak your intentions. You can write something from your heart, but something that you're focused on your outcome. What is the outcome that you want to create? What is the change that you want to see? So that's really, if you don't have to use the Bible verses, but you definitely want to have some kind of spoken word, because there's so much power in the spoken word. You can write it down as well, but there's something about, because like in Wicca and other things, people use incantations. But you can come up with your own words and still be successful. So it just comes down to, what is the result that you want to see? That is what you want to focus on.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're about 30 minutes in.
It went fast.
Already. So is there anything else you'd like to add here at the end of anything that you'd like to say to people out in the world? Just like, I know that there are a lot of people who are interested in hoodoo who aren't African American, and they're always like, oh, can I do it? And I'm like, you can do it. There's all kinds of information online. I can't keep anybody from doing it. You can buy stuff online. However, I would recommend, though, that you also look for what is the folk magic in your family tradition. Like, do the homework, do the research, because that magic will be even more powerful because your ancestor is going to be involved in that. And the other thing is, if you are going to try hoodoo, then also remember that there's a responsibility there. The conjure person, the root worker, as we're also called in hoodoo, there's a responsibility to help the person who is being oppressed. So if you are a non-Black person and you want to do hoodoo, that means that you also have a responsibility to look out for African Americans. You have a responsibility to talk to your racist grandmother or shut them down when people aren't saying anything. It's not a great idea for you to want to practice hoodoo, but then be silent when people are still being oppressed today. So that's really all I have to say about that. Yeah. And also, if you want to purchase hoodoo products, which is possible online and things like that, be aware of who you're buying from and try and support Black sellers and things of that nature too. That's another good way that we can put our money where our mouth is, basically.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. You're right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to me today about all of this.
Thank you.
And like I said, guys, all the links are down below if you want to learn more or get in contact or any of that good stuff. So if you going forward, if there's anyone else you'd like me to interview, please let me know. If not, I will keep going and knocking on people's doors. Well, it was lovely to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Joey.